Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. It's BANLIST season. We're 2 weeks away, 2 to 4 weeks away probably from getting an actual ban list here in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. It's a very exciting time, especially since it's lining up with a pretty big core set as well. So we're going to have a lot of really exciting changes for the competitive scene. It's a hype moment. And I'm a Yu-Gi tuber, so let's do a ban list discussion video. I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy that you've seen before, but I'll tell you what, we're going to zoom through it pretty quick. I'm not going to spend too much time on anything here, but I'll give you my general thoughts about everything. As you can see, I've got my kind of prediction stuff, the probably banned and the probably limited stuff that I kind of expect Konami to go for. And then I have my sections, what I want banned that I don't think will be, and what I want limited that I don't think will be. And then the mess section, stuff that we'll talk about, but I don't think really needs to be hit. So let's get into it. Starting off, you might as well start with the best decks in the game, because that tends to be the most important things we need to address, aside from when we have stuff like Imperial Order in the format. That always sucks, but yeah, let's start with Cachetira. Cachetira is a very good deck, but it is, I think some parts of it are fine and cool, but it has the one degenerate side. And I think that's why I really want more than anything Diablosis to get banned. And I think it's really important to note the one distinction I want to make with Diablosis is I actually don't think that what Diablosis does is the most insane thing in the world. But what I think it is that just this card existing and being an option for the best deck in the game means that everybody else has to play around it, particularly in two ways. One, you're playing doubles of cards you don't want to play doubles of in your extra because you're terrified your opponent's going to rip the only copy. Two, so it hurts deck building, like as a whole, across the whole competitive scene. Everybody has to be around that, and their extracts are less flexible because of it. Secondly, I hate that there's this guessing game with Cachetira where, you're going second and like, okay, do I side this card because it's good versus a Rise Heart pass, but it's not great versus the full end board zone lock thing, or vice versa. And with that situation, it just creates a really unhealthy situation where you shouldn't have to guess. You should know kind of what's going to be good against a certain matchup, and that's the part that I hate, is the stuff where it's not even when this card's on the field and doing its thing, it's what it presents as a dilemma to the opponent and everyone else in the format. So I want this card to go. It'll free up, deck building. It'll take away the super high degenerate play, high ceiling play that Cachetira has, and that's why I want to see it go. I think it's the number one thing. And if it goes, I think I'm actually fine with Cachetira, but I do think Konami will do something else. I'm going to put Unicorn to limited, and I think this one's really safe. There could be another main deck hit that they do. I wouldn't mind seeing Wraithsoft go to 1 as well, just another little consistency hit. I do not want Fenrir to get hit. If it gets hit at all, I wanted to see it go to 2 at least, so that way people can still play it as a generic card in their deck and still be worth it. At 1 copy, it's just not. So yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing here is Unicorn limited. Maybe they'll also limit something else. People have also talked about banning Birth. But I think Birth is just such a good card. If I was a Cachetira player, I'd be like, don't ban Birth. Birth is just a good card. Not broken by any means. So I don't know, hurting a little bit of consistency is fine there. So yeah, that's what I have for Cachetira. Moving on, Branded. Expulsion needs to go. It's the one, it's kind of in the same vein as Diablosis. It's the one degenerate thing that this deck does. Otherwise, this deck has so many cool cards, so many cool versions and ways you can like pivot with the deck and combos and stuff that they can go into. But because this exists, it's just the best way to play the deck. And it's so degenerate too. People are playing like siding triple Ghost Bell on their side just because they know they just auto lose if Expulsion resolves. That's terrible. We never want to be in a place like that. So please, Konami, ban Expulsion. This needs to go. I don't expect much else to happen to Branded, but I'd like to see Fusion get limited. I know they won't do this just because they have the new cards coming out in the upcoming set, but it's something I'd like to see. Moving on, Sprites. I think the OCG has done it wrong, to be honest. They limited Jet and Starter, and of course, Elf is banned as well. We already have Elf banned. All these other cards, though, are at 3. I think the right move is actually to limit Blue. If you look at every single deck list that like people are playing, you can't play Sprite pure. You have to combine it with something. And as an engine, no matter what, there's 3 blue in every like splashed Sprite engine, except for like very specific scenarios. Other than that, though, you see some people play 2 or 1 Jet. You see people play 1 Starter sometimes. That's actually been like kind of a fad as of late. A handful of deck lists only playing 1 because the lock is a little brutal. So it's like it's an extender that only is good at the very end of using everything else that you have available. And so I think the option is to hit blue. That's going to hit anybody who really tries to play this engine and limit its capabilities. It still means they still have that turn 1 ceiling that if you go through blue, obviously it's blue, jet, spell. But if with blue at 1, you don't have that follow-up play of being able to go starter into blue, into jet, into a play. It's just specifically into jet and into a card. You're not going as hard plus on the follow-up turns, which does matter for a deck like Sprite. That does end up grinding a good amount of the time. So I think blue to 1 is the move. From there, we move to Runic. 3 options here for Runic. I really don't think there's much point in hitting like just the generic card or like the utility cards in Runic. I think it's got to be one of these 3, and I think you got to limit one of them. I don't really love limiting Huggin. I guess it's fine because once you like go through it, you go through it, but you have ways to like get this card engraved or get this card put back. You know, it's whatever. You know, it's not that big of a deal. You know, hitting Fountain I don't love either because putting Fountain at 1, the argument is it'd make it much more fragile for the deck. But to be honest, it's only fragile to like banishing removal because if it's sent to graveyard, it is gettable. You can get it back off of Gary, and if it's sent back to the extra deck, you can just get it off a second Huggin. So if you limit Fountain, you probably have to limit Huggin as well. Or something like that. So that way you just can't keep getting it back. And I don't like that. That just feels like not the best way to go about it. I just like to see tip go to 1. I don't think they'll do big hits here, to be honest. Also because we just got a new Runic Fusion monster revealed for the set after Dune. I actually think that card's kind of cool. And so I think they won't want to go after this deck wholeheartedly. I just think a little hit to tip, just to put it to 1. That way it hurts a little bit of consistency. When you want to play 15, 17 names of the quick plays in your main deck, you lose 2 copies of tip. Now you got to play more of the lesser good ones, which means you're going to have hands where you're drawing 2 or 3 of those if you're playing high ratios on them. And those cards are just way worse, especially in multiples. Drawing 1 is okay, but multiples is not great. And so that doesn't help. And so it definitely hurts. And also in the grind, when you're drawing 3 off of Fountain, you're not finding tip that often, which means you kind of just have to take what you get, which is hope that it's a good one and one that's going to come up as a good interruption because you're not finding tip as often to be able to get you whatever interruption you want to find. So I think that's the way to go about it. From there, I move to a couple of other just generic options to mention. Skill Drain. I don't really care about Skill Drain. I know people are up in arms about Floodgates. They hate them. It's fine. You know what? I'll put it in John Wants It. It would be a plus for me if Skill Drain gets hit. But if it doesn't, I'm not going to cry about it. So it's fine. In a perfect world, we'd have all these cards hit. But other than Labyrinth, there's not a ton of stuff messing around with Skill Drain. It feels like Floodgates are so popular in the OCG. But not as much here. To a degree, they are, but like lesser so. Ibly, again, I don't care about Ibly that much. It's kind of like a perfect world card. It's probably it's an annoying floodgate that people shouldn't have to worry about. But also we came into this format talking this card up so much. Like what happens if you run into a cash player and you don't have double Lingaribo in your extra deck? Like you're just getting cooked. And then like I can't find a player on Ibly, at least for Cachetira. I know some other decks have messed around with it as well. So like that may be a thing, but I don't know. I've just not seen it enough to really be that worried about it. And there's a ton of outs to this card, whether it's one, especially if Diablosis is gone, 1 slot in your extra deck for Lingaribo. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty easy to counter this card, I think, overall. And the last card I'll throw out there is probably just banning this FTK card. This is the burn card for Super Heavy Samurai. That FTK actually does look a little bit concerning because it's one of those FTKs that can kind of pivot into just a good combo strategy if it needs to. It can also pivot, or not even pivot, but it can play a good amount of hand traps, so it actually can go second to a degree. So probably not a deck that we want to have to deal with, so I'd like to see this preemptively hit. Just dumb. Don't want to deal with the FTK. But yeah, those are all my general thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you agree with here? What do you disagree with here? I'd love to hear your thoughts there. Is there any cards that I didn't even mention here? I didn't even have in the discussion that I should have thrown in here for the format that deserves to be discussed? I'd love to hear it down below, but those are my ban list thoughts going forward in 10 minutes or less. But I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching as always. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.